Welcome to the I Love Tattooing podcast with your hosts, Jack and Clay, two tattoo artists and shop owners with decades of experience working in street shops where walk-ins are always welcome.
So this is a discussion about how to get an apprenticeship and what to expect in an apprenticeship. I think we have to define apprenticeship before we have this discussion. By looking at the government documents that we both looked at from the Department of Labor and Department of Education and places like that, there's legal terms involved with this stuff, one of which is intern. An intern is somebody who is not compensated for the work that they may or may not be doing. It's sort of an observational position, and it typically lasts 1 to 3 months. They work somebody in a field to kind of see if they like it. And I presume it's working in the opposite direction to see if the person in the field likes that individual for the job as well. Once you use the term apprentice, it appears that there's kind of legal definitions for that, and it is a paid position generally, where you receive structured on-the-job training from somebody in the field that you are trying to get into. I can remember from my own experience in the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Union, the structure was A, B, and C level, and then after that, you were a journeyman. I don't know what the tattoo industry would collectively agree to as far as being reached, the journeyman level of tattooer. I've seen things for time commitments and then not compensation. What is the word I'm looking for? Competency, where you can like take a test and like, yeah, you understand this stuff, or you get observed doing something. And it's like, yes, this person knows how to do XYZ task. And then there's a hybrid model that takes time and competency to certify or indicate that somebody is able to perform the skills that they're trying to learn. The standard, I think, is 5,000 hours to become a professional or expert, or I forget exactly what the word is. And a lot of the apprenticeship stuff that I saw was 6,000 hours or 36 months, which I think is about 6,000 hours of 40 hours a week of work, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to do the math to confirm that. But I think the hours of being exposed to something is definitely how you become expert at it, as far as doing it and observing it and interacting with people that are doing it and learning from them. So I think that's probably a reasonable expectation. So then I would say, there is the internship, which is 1 to 3 months of just kind of try you out and see if you like it with no compensation. Then you would start an apprenticeship, which would be at least a year of learning how things work, all of the things in the shop, sterilization, sanitization, that kind of stuff. And then from there, you would be what, we have kind of coined the term junior artist. So you would be apprentice, then junior artist, and you would probably be a junior artist for 1 to 2 years, depending on how quickly you picked it up. And then you would just be a regular tattooer. But every person, I think, would be different. Some people might be able to do all of it in a year if they were super dedicated, super smart, and just naturally took to it. But other people, it might take as long as 5 years. I don't know. I mean, there's these things aren't all laid out specifically as far as the competency training and testing and things like that. So I wish there was a kind of universally accepted process, but I'm not aware of one at this point.
Well, sure. The individual skill and how quickly they take to something is obviously going to be a huge factor. I know of an artist that apprenticed for Atomic, and man, in 6 months, that dude was amazing, you know. And then, you have other people where it takes a lot longer. The U.S. Department of Labor specifies that apprentices must complete 2,000 hours of on the job learning and 144 hours of classroom work.
Okay.
And it said that the required time to complete an apprenticeship can range from 1 to 6 years.
Okay.
And I don't know if you actually have to pay an apprenticeship. I was looking on the U.S. Department of Labor's website, and it seemed like there was a lot of different conditions, but maybe you didn't have to pay them. According to the Department of Labor, though, the average starting wage for an apprentice is 15 an hour. Now, obviously, for tattooing, it's going to be a lot different because tattooing is a commission-based industry. Apprentices aren't doing tattoos for money, so there's no way to pay them. And paying an apprentice an hourly wage is unreasonable. I think some people can get into some trouble, though, because it's historically been, in return for me teaching you and giving you a career, I expect some work out of you. And if you, depending on what you're having that apprentice do, you might actually have to pay them for their labor. If you're having them do stuff in the shop, stuff that you normally have other artists do, sweeping the floors and cleaning the glass and stuff like that, that's one thing. But I mean, if they're at your house laying carpet, that's a different matter,
Yeah, that's definitely a gray area. And I know a lot of people have used apprentices for things outside of the tattoo shop historically. I know that we have used apprentices to do anything from, maintenance in the shop to remodeling and things like that.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm not even sure of the legality of that, to be honest with you. All the stuff I read did say that apprenticeships typically are paid, not
Right.
not must be paid or anything like that, but typically.
Yeah.
Um, and it did say that most include classroom education as well.
Yeah. Yeah. The Department of Labor says typically apprenticeship training is offered by the employer at no cost to the apprentice. And if there are costs associated with the program, they must be disclosed to the apprentice before they agree to participate in the program. I have heard artists in the tattoo industry really badmouth other artists that require an apprentice to pay for their apprenticeship. And I've heard the reasoning be, just because somebody has money doesn't mean they deserve to learn to tattoo. Somebody could have a lot of talent and no income and deserve it more. And I get what they're saying. However, if you want it bad enough, you'll figure it out. You'll come up with the money. I did.
Yeah.
I
No,
know a lot of other people that do.
I
So
don't think that's unreasonable to expect somebody to pay for an apprenticeship. I mean, it clearly has value.
right, yeah, there's definite value to it. I mean, you're giving somebody a career. I have apprentices. I've taught people, and I didn't charge them. I've never charged somebody for an apprenticeship because I'm in a situation where I want quality artists to work for the company.
Yeah.
And sometimes in order to get that, you got to train them. That's a normal thing in a lot of industries.
Yes, absolutely. Especially something as specialized as tattooing, where there isn't this kind of standard, either acceptable school or universal apprenticeship program that you can say, hey, I'm certified. I got my credentials right here. That doesn't exist in tattooing.
Yeah. I actually saw online, like, somebody was offering advice for, you know, people seeking a tattoo apprenticeship. And one of the things it said was, if they try to charge you money, run. And
Wow.
I don't think that's good advice. However, if there's an exchange of money, then there's definitely some legal requirements that your mentor, I mean, you're paying him to do something.
Yes.
You're paying for a service. They need to actually do that. And there's a lot of legality there when money changes hands. And honestly, that's one of the reasons I haven't charged anybody. is I just don't want to deal with that. And it's not worth it to me, because if you honestly thought about the man hours involved in training somebody to tattoo and what we get paid hourly when we are tattooing, it would be as much as a university,
Yes.
the value of it. So it's, yeah, I want good staff, and, I enjoy teaching and I enjoy helping people. So the
I
right
think
people.
I think that the person or whomever it was that said if somebody's charging money, it's not fair because there's somebody else that maybe can't afford it that isn't getting that opportunity. I think that presupposes that the person charging money didn't already, look for somebody that is worthy, or that the person that has money is only being selected because they have money. I mean, you
Sure.
could both have money and be the right person for that.
Yeah. Well, I think
So
that boils down to petty jealousy, really.
sure. Yeah.
Um, I worked with a guy in years ago, and he was an apprentice, and he was a excellent artist. And he paid for his apprenticeship. Well, his parents paid for his apprenticeship, and a lot of people shit all over that dude for that. Oh, mommy and daddy bought you an apprenticeship. It's like that, just because his parents paid for it doesn't mean he didn't deserve it. That's actually pretty cool on his parents' part, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Back then, parents certainly did not want their children to grow up and be tattooers. Even mine, my father is heavily tattooed, is been best friends with a tattoo artist for as long as I've been alive, and tried to talk me out of becoming a tattooer.
Yeah. I definitely think that having supportive parents isn't necessarily a bad thing. I wonder how many of the people that complained about this individual getting his apprenticeship paid for by his parents ever got any kind of support from their parents, as far as like helping him buy a house or a car or loaning him money or whatever. I mean, that's the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. So, all of that being said, how should you go about getting an apprenticeship? If you're an artist, and you think that this thing is the thing for you, how do you do that?
Well, I think traditionally, the way that people get into the tattoo business is the first thing they do is go get a tattoo and understand what it is to go through that. It's you want your tattooer to have some tattoos. A wise man by the name of Timmy Tats said, "A tattooer with no tattoos is like a barefooted shoe salesman,"
Or a
which I thought
skinny
was
chef?
pretty good.
Yeah,
Skinny chef, I I think a barefooted shoe salesman's more appropriate.
yeah,
Um, I think having a tattoo is you know, knowing what it is to get a tattoo by going through that is the first thing that you should do. Then you should maybe try to meet some tattooers, probably by going in tattoo shops and again getting tattooed, and get to know them, see which people you kind of connect with on a personal level. It's not a matter of like, oh, this guy does good tattoos, I want to learn from him. If you're going to learn to tattoo from somebody, it's going to take you at least a year, best case scenario.
right,
So you're going to spend a year of your life with somebody. You want to be with somebody that you get along with,
right,
somebody
for
that
sure.
treats you well, somebody that respects you and that you respect. There needs to be a mutual respect between the artist that's teaching and the artist that's learning. If not, then it's not going to work. It's going to be a terrible experience. And sometimes, unfortunately, people get blinded by their desire and overlook the fact that they're mistreated or disrespected or something like that. And that's a shame, because
Yeah,
some people that could turn out to be great tattooers might end up hating it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The apprenticeship experience is going to be what determines what kind of tattooer that person's going to be, if they love it. And I think to be successful and have longevity, you have to love it. sometimes the customers can make it difficult, and you gotta love what you're doing, or you're not gonna make it, or you're gonna be just a miserable fuck. And I
Yeah,
know people like that. You know, we
sure.
have we have a good friend that he doesn't love it. You know what I mean?
I
But
do.
it's all he's got. So
Yeah,
he's
that's
stuck.
unfortunate, you know.
It is. It is.
Um,
And he's a grumpy dude, you know? Um I I knew I wanted a tattoo before I ever got a tattoo, but it was different for me because I kind of grew up with my dad getting tattoos,
right.
and you know, his friend Rick being a tattooer. Excuse me.
You had a
Um
behind the scenes look at it as a
Kind of a little bit, like, you know, I just knew it was cool, and that's really what I wanted to do. And the first place that I got a tattoo, as soon as I was old enough to get tattooed, I asked that dude, and I mean, and he blew me off, of course.
Yep.
um and I was in the army. I was at AIT, so I was at a base that I was only going to be at for about 4.5 months, so there wouldn't have been worth it for him to teach me. And then as soon as I got to where I was stationed when I was in the army, another guy from the barracks that saw I had a tattoo, and he had a couple of tattoos, and I wanted to get more tattoos, and he drove me around to every shop that was in the area, all like 4 or 5 of them. And then we pulled up to the last one. He was like, "This is the best one. I saved this one for last." And we went in, we met the dude. I think I got tattooed on that visit. And I told him then I wanted to learn to tattoo. And he was like, "Yeah, no." And I just kept going. I was every payday, once a month, I was going and getting tattoos. And then we were hanging out because that was the thing to do. Like, you'd be driving around bored. You'd be like, "Oh, let's go to the tattoo shop. Let's see what Dave's doing." And you know, we just go and hang out, and he was cool with that. If he wasn't tattooing, it gave him somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
And if he was tattooing, you know, we'd bullshit with the other people there or whatever. And one day I heard somebody describing what they wanted to Dave, who was became my mentor. And I was like, "Oh, I can draw that." And he was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah, no problem. I'll bring it back tomorrow." And I don't even remember what the drawing was. I think it was some kind of tribal thing. It was the early 90s.
Yeah.
I drew it and I brought it in. I gave it to him, and he was like, "Great." And he tattooed the dude. He tattooed it on the guy.
Nice.
So then that was my thing. And anytime somebody was asking something about drawing, I would just be like, you know, "Hey, I'll draw that for you." So I'm drawing stuff for the guy, and I'm showing up and being like, "Hey, man, you're busy tattooing. I'll bring you Taco Bell or whatever." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, go get me some food." And it got to the point where that dude was going to agree to teach me to tattoo, or he was going to ban me from the fucking shop.
Yeah. You kind of just started working your way in there.
Yeah.
And
I was determined, and he told me no a gazillion times.
now, is
And
that what you call gatekeeping? If somebody just tells you flat out no?
um sure, why not? I don't know. Who cares? The thing is like, I anybody that asks me for an apprenticeship, I tell them no the first time,
Yeah.
unless you've got a portfolio full of artwork and the right personality, where I'm just like, "Whoa, yeah."
Yeah.
You know, there's been several times where I've looked at somebody and just their attitude and their artwork and been like, "Man, this motherfucker's going to be good." And
Well, okay. So I agree with what you just said right there. You
mhm,
can look at somebody and see the diamond in the rough.
yeah,
How long did it take you to figure that out? Because you've been doing this for almost 30 years at this point.
not too long.
Okay.
Um, it depends on like how they're drawing. Like, if you want to be a tattoo apprentice and you want to come in and show me some of your artwork, other mediums are cool, paintings and charcoal or whatever it is you like to do.
Yeah.
But if you're already drawing tattoos, stuff that's like, if you have a grasp of, clean lines and good composition, and not every drawing really works as a tattoo, and it's hard. Some people don't ever get that. They don't make it very far.
Yeah.
So depending on, I've had a few people that showed up and it's like, "You're already drawing tattoos."
Right.
And the caliber of artists that tattooing has attracted now is amazing. I used to be willing to help somebody work on their art skills, and now why? That's a waste of my time. There's a gazillion other people that want to learn that are excellent artists, and you just kind of guide them. Like, I'm not going to teach you to draw. I'm not qualified to teach you to draw. I can teach
Well,
you to tattoo.
let me ask you this. Would you say that you would teach somebody that knows how to draw well the correct way to draw for tattooing?
Yeah.
Does that
Well,
count the
yeah.
same?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, if you've got it, if you are a really good artist, most of the time, sure, I can teach you, what's going to work and what doesn't work. I did try and teach somebody that was the most amazing airbrush artist I've ever seen in my life.
I
Just
think I know who you're talking about.
unbelievable. Yes, you do. His brother's a tattooer,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and it was a miserable failure.
yep,
He, I mean, obviously he knew he was a good artist,
yep.
and it was hard for him to take direction from somebody. And airbrushing and tattooing are very different. And that dude lacked the ability to put a pencil on a piece of paper and make a nice clean straight line. He couldn't do it. And I don't think he wanted I think he lacked the drive to be able to do it, because that just didn't seem important to him, and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
After much pestering and everything about wanting to tattoo himself, I was like, fine, do it. You know what I mean? If you're not going to listen to me, do whatever you want. And he did it. And he was like, I feel like you set me up for failure. I'm like, no,
That's
dude,
amazing.
you set yourself up for failure because you didn't listen. And somebody else in the shop, because he was such a good artist, was like, maybe I can help him. Maybe I can get through to him. And I think that only lasted a few weeks, and then the dude was gone.
Yeah.
He's airbrushing RVs or whatever. And the thing is like, why do you want to learn to tattoo, dude? He was making easily six figures
Yeah.
with his airbrush skills.
I think that particular kind of artwork is even rarer and more specialized than tattooing. Now, I don't
Yeah.
know what the demand for that is, but if you're good at something like that, like mural painting and that kind of stuff, I mean,
Yeah.
you can make a good living at it for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I get it. Some people, I fell in love with tattooing the first tattoo I ever saw. And I get it. Like, I understand, like, maybe that dude had that same desire. He certainly didn't show me that, but whatever. Not everybody expresses it the same way, I guess.
Well, at the time, if I'm not mistaken, he wasn't a young guy.
No.
I mean, he wasn't a kid. I mean, he was an adult.
Yeah, I actually think he might have been a year or two older than me.
Yeah.
And I was probably in my late 30s then.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you need, like you said, you need to get to know some tattooers or start hanging out at the shop. I've been asking a lot of my staff, hey, how did you get your apprenticeship? And all of the ones that have been tattooing, I'll say longer than like 5 years, they all did the same thing. They started getting tattooed. They started either hanging out with the tattooers that worked at that shop, or running errands for them, getting them lunch, and just making themselves useful to show that, hey, I could be an asset if you give me the chance. All of them. And I was also surprised by how many started out one place, and for whatever reason it didn't work out. Usually the mentor just didn't want to teach them, or didn't know how to teach them. Was all about having somebody sweep the floor, but not really about showing them anything. And they wound up going somewhere else that taught them.
One time I heard somebody say, you learn to tattoo at one shop and then you go work at another. Like, that was just the predetermined, like, natural order of things. And I was like, who the hell would teach somebody to go be their competition? That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
I had a written agreement, and it probably wasn't enforceable, but I had to leave town.
Town as defined by what? The city limits? Or like a certain mile radius from that location? Like what?
Probably 100 miles.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. That's
Um,
definitely not enforceable, but it's interesting, and that was
but
probably pretty standard back then, to be
yeah,
honest with
and
you.
that was the understanding. I also paid for my apprenticeship.
Yeah,
If I'm going to spend the time to teach you and not charge you, I'm doing that because I expect you to work for the company.
yeah,
Obviously, I can't force you, and I wouldn't want to if I could. I want you to want to work for us. You know what I mean? But yeah, that was a thing. If you were going to teach somebody, no artist wanted to train their competition, and for as long as there's been tattooers that say there's too many tattooers.
oh,
So
yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I agree. One thing I've always told anybody that learned to tattoo with us is we expect you to work, 3 years after you finish your apprenticeship.
yeah,
And I think that's reasonable. Um,
yeah,
unless there's some crazy circumstances. I know one of the guys that works with us now, he started working with us, and his ex-wife, who had joint custody of the kids, joined the Navy and got stationed in another state. And he was like, "Hey, my kids live there and I need to go there with them." And I was like,
yeah.
"Yeah, okay. No, yeah, do that, man." Like that's,
Of course,
that I wasn't like, "No, you said you were going to do this." He
yeah,
was straight up about it, and we worked it out. But he's back with us now, and that's good.
yeah. Life happens.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? That those things happen. Yeah, I've had people that learned with us that had to move away for family reasons. Mom's sick, I got to go take care of her,
sure.
or one guy, his lady, just Florida wasn't for her. She wanted to go back to where she was from, and I get it. Whatever,
Yeah.
life happens. You know what I mean? But besides ingratiating yourself in a tattoo shop, what else would you tell somebody that wants to get into tattooing?
Well, one of the things that I personally do when somebody says, "Hey, I want to learn how to tattoo," they always say, "I can draw whatever." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Let me see your artwork." But I also want you to write me a letter that says what tattooing is to you and why you want to be a tattooer.
Interesting.
So you can look at somebody's art and understand what their process is for creating that. If you know anything about art, you can see how they drew it, the foundation of the image and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But to really see where somebody is, I don't know, on a intellectual or emotional level, and like understand them, you
Hmm.
need to ask some questions that are tough for them to answer because they probably haven't thought about it a lot. And the
Right.
answer isn't like, "Oh, because tattooing's cool." Like, yeah, I know tattooing's cool. Why what is tattooing to you? What does it mean to you? What do you
Yeah.
think it is? And there's no wrong answer to that, right? And then why do you want to be a tattooer?
Right. I don't ask them to write anything down, but I ask them those questions. Why
Yeah.
why do you think you want to do this? Like, do you know what you're getting yourself into? You know, I am training a girl right now that had a failed apprenticeship somewhere else. The dude wasn't really teaching her anything, and he told her, "You'll never have a. You're going to get divorced a couple times or something like that."
Was she married?
No, but she's in a serious committed relationship,
Okay.
and I was like, well, I don't know how true that is. I was like, however, being twice divorced myself, um, you know, honestly, like, what kind of woman wants to start a family with a dude that's never home at night or on the weekends? There because that's when we're making money,
Yeah.
and tattooing has changed a lot. I know you've been married to the same person for your entire career, but
Yeah.
she's also in the industry.
Yeah. We also had kids before I was a full-time professional tattooer.
Right,
So,
right.
I mean, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. I don't think being a tattooer necessarily equals bad relationships. I think half the people, I think it's 50% of marriages end in divorce now anyway.
Yeah.
Probably more than that. But sure, that's definitely something to consider. Like, you're it's not a 9 to 5 job. There's no paid vacation unless there's somebody out there offered paid vacations. I don't
Typically, there's no paid vacation.
know. There's no hourly paycheck. Yeah, I want them to understand what they're getting themselves into, the time commitment, the fact that they're not going to be making money for a while, a year. So you're going to be at the tattoo shop full time, and then you've got to go do some other job to support yourself or have a family that can support you. A lot of them, that's apprentices, while they're not at work, are doing Uber Eats or something, some kind of flexible gig work, something
Yeah.
like that. Artwork is important, like you said. I don't want to see your digital art. If you come in and that's all you've got, I'm going to tell you no. Well, I'm going to tell you no matter what. And if you come back, you might get another no. But digital artwork, I'm going to piss a bunch of people off, is just a form of cheating. I need to see that you can actually do it on paper, because if you can't, you'll never do it on skin. And if you're drawing on your iPad or whatever, there's tools that correct your line work to make it nice and smooth, and all the brushes for blending and shading, and it ain't the same as drawn on paper or canvas or whatever.
We got shots fired over here. All right, listen.
Am I wrong?
No. And yes. So here's my position on that. Use the tools that are right for the job. Okay.
Sure.
So there probably was a time where guys were hand poking tattoos, calling those guys with the electric pencils the cheaters because they're not doing it the real way. I mean, come on,
I think
man.
that's different. I think that's
What?
very different.
100 years
Well,
ago? I mean, it's the same thing. You're not using acetate stencils. You're cheating.
That's not true either. So
It's technology, you Luddite. Get over it.
look, I have a tablet, and sometimes I draw things on it because, man, it is really easy to lay stuff out. It's a time saver.
Yeah.
But when you draw on an iPad, or I use a Surface Pro, whatever, there are tools that people use to fix the line work. And you want to, and the blending and everything of the colors, there are tools that make that nice. Now, I'm not saying you should never use that, but I want to see that you can do it on paper. Because if you can't do it on paper, you can't do it on a person.
Right.
If you can't do it on paper, you might be able to do it on an iPad, but still not be able to do it on a person.
Sure.
Because there's no electronics that's going to fix your bad line work.
That's true. Maybe a blurry photograph will make it better, right? I think for the purpose of learning how to tattoo, you should be able to draw on paper with pencil or pen or whatever, like you were saying. But I think once you know how to do that, using digital media is fine.
Yeah,
but
huge time saver.
If you're coming to somebody to learn how to tattoo and all you have is digital, then you might want to explore the world of pencil and paper. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, another reason that I ask the people to write those papers for me, and I usually say, like, a couple paragraphs, nothing major. So one is, if somebody can write something, you can see how their mind works. Like, if the grammar's correct, if their spelling is good, if it's one run-on sentence, like, those kind of things, you get to understand a little bit more about their intellect. Number two, you have that document for 6, 8, 12 months from now to show it to them and say, do you still think this? And see how they've changed their opinion, if they have.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So that's always been interesting to me, to see people read what they wrote and be like, holy shit, it's totally not what I thought it was. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But I want them to understand that, their opinion of this is going to change.
Yeah.
Because, you're looking at it from the outside. You're going, oh, this is cool. Like, I want to be like these guys. And then you get in there and you're just like, what have I got myself into? I'm way over my head. I don't know what I'm doing. And then you get to the point where you're like, okay, I kind of got a handle on this, but it's going to take me the rest of my life to master it, or I might not ever master it. There's a lot of different perspective change that happens. And I think that's an important thing to show somebody.
Yeah. Tattooing has exceeded every expectation I could have ever had. It's way cooler than I thought it was.
That's great.
Um, it's way harder than I thought it was going to be.
Possibly,
And
yeah.
that's, well, anything worthwhile is hard, right?
Agreed.
Um,
Yes.
uh, the One of the most amazing things about tattooing is um, how the industry has evolved and the changes, and technology is a huge part of that. Not just with, the tools that we use to create art now, but the tools that we use to create tattoos have
Yes.
changed and evolved, and the fact that it's a constant learning process is outstanding.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
like you're never really done with your apprenticeship. You're just able to tattoo people without somebody looking over your shoulder. You know,
Yeah, there's no stagnation, or it's not static at all. It's dynamic. It's always
yeah.
growing, changing, evolving, and you have to kind of stay on top of it. If you're not doing it,
Hmm.
you're doing yourself a disservice. If you got to stay on it, you can't
Yeah.
stop.
I know an artist that is very anti-technology, and they're at the point in their career where that's actually holding them back
Yeah,
now. They're able to execute like beautiful tattoos, but we live in a digital age, and you've got to be able to use a computer for office work and scheduling your appointments and all of that.
marketing. Yeah,
And that's holding this person back right now. Maybe they'll realize it one day. I don't know, but it's kind of a bummer to see.
yeah, that's a
Um,
shame.
and because I'm not done shitting on iPad users yet, there was a young lady that came to us for an apprenticeship. Again, had been at a different place that was terrible, because a lot of people don't know. They're like, "Oh my God, this person's willing to teach me," and then they just dive in, and they don't realize that this guy's a dirtbag, and you probably shouldn't have a tattoo shop in a flea market and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um, she drew every single thing on an iPad, and everything that she wanted to tattoo on people needed to be 4 times bigger than what the customer wanted and how she wanted to do it. And it was because she just kept zooming in on her drawing and adding more details and adding more stuff to it. And she was a great artist. But I kept telling her, I'm like, that you got to simplify that. There's too much going on there. You know what I mean? You're not ready to do 6-hour tattoos. You need to shrink that down. You need to simplify it. And once I realized the problem was that she kept zooming in on her iPad, I was like, you just need to draw on paper for right now. She was incapable of doing so.
wow,
She is not a tattooer. She's, last I heard, a waitress at a strip club.
damn, that's wild.
Yep.
Uh,
The crutch became a hindrance.
yep. Maybe it's the same kind of situation as the airbrush guy that you had that was so used to doing airbrush that
Right.
he couldn't not do it that way. That
Right.
process was so ingrained in him.
Yeah,
Um,
God, what a shame if
yeah,
that he
he would have been a great tattooer.
yeah.
One thing I think that we have glaringly overlooked is if somebody wants to become a tattooer and get an apprenticeship and go through this process, the one thing that they should not do is buy tattoo equipment and start tattooing.
No. No.
Because how many people have you had come to you and say, "Well, I've already got machines. I'm already tattooed. I tattooed my mom. I've already done some tattoos. So like, I think I'm ready."
Yeah. So many people during the shutdown were like, "Oh, I guess I'll learn to tattoo now." And they bought some cheap stuff off Amazon and
Yeah.
just went. So many people. That is definitely not the best way to do it. One, in because in many states like Florida, that's illegal. You're not allowed to tattoo out of your house. You're not allowed to tattoo without a license, and you can't get a license in Florida unless you work in a shop. Other states might be more lenient, and I know that there are some big name artists out there, some famous people that have private studios in their house, but it's typically something separate, you know. They certainly don't have the family dog running around their private studio or whatever. Guy Etchison has a private studio at his house. He
Yeah.
built something specifically for the purpose of tattooing, and it is, for all intents and purposes, it's a tattoo shop. It's just
Yeah.
attached to
Well,
his domicile.
yeah. He's also a professional tattooer that's well established in the industry. He's not some person that just ordered a tattoo machine off of Amazon and decided they were going to learn how to tattoo in
Of
2 weeks real
course,
quick.
of
So
course.
I think that, people that think the best way to get into the business is to just buy a tattoo machine. First of all, you don't know what the hell you're buying. You
Right.
don't know enough about tattoo machines to buy a good one. And most people that are good professional tattoo suppliers aren't going to sell to just anybody off the street. I mean, there
No.
probably are some, and there's a way to get those machines, eBay and stuff like that, but you don't know what you're looking at
No.
unless you've been around the business and been around some artists that can say, hey, this is a good machine for you to start with.
Hmm.
You don't
If
want to
you,
buy some kit.
right. And if you come in and show me some tattoos that you've done with no guidance whatsoever, I don't care how many YouTube videos you watch, that doesn't count. You have already started a bunch of bad habits that is going to take twice as long to break as it would just to teach you when you were a blank canvas.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's not like you buy a welding machine and you kind of tinker around in your garage. I mean, there's a lot more to it.
Yeah. And tattooing is kind of like, there's three main components. There's the artistic end of things, there's the technical end of things, and then there is the medical end of things. You have to understand aseptic technique and
Yeah.
sterile chain of events and cross contamination. You have to have a really solid grasp on that.
Sanitization, all that.
Yeah.
I think you forgot one aspect of it that is inevitably almost always overlooked by every single person who teaches people how to tattoo, and that's the customer service aspect
Of
of it.
course. Sure.
It
Yeah.
is a sales
Absolutely.
job, and people that say, "Oh, well, I'm a good artist, I can do this and that, and I want to express myself by doing tattoos." That is not what this is at all. If you want to be an artist and express yourself, rent a loft, buy some paint, go crazy. This is a customer service job. You
Yeah.
are rendering other people's ideas on their skin for them, not you.
Right. Right. And that I learned that is the case in any job where you work as an artist, and sometimes it is absolutely soul crushing. But you're a tattooer who works in a tattoo shop. Your job is to do tattoos, and it ain't always going to be the cool stuff, especially when you're starting out. If you are good enough and you are good at marketing, maybe you can get to a point where you get to just pick and choose what you do. You only do your artwork or whatever. But those guys that are able to accomplish that and make a living, those guys are the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
And they started out doing baby mama names and kanji just like the rest of us.
Yeah. I worked with one guy who is a well-established artist at this point. He learned to tattoo in the shop with us in Tampa. And he was such a good artist that anybody that came in with an idea, like they would bring in a picture on their phone or just whatever, he would look at it and be like, okay, cool. And he would draw the coolest version of that you've ever seen just right on the spot. That was like
Mhm.
that was done in his style. And like it would be a gecko or something that I wouldn't normally be like, I want to get a tattoo of a gecko. But the gecko that this guy would draw, I would be like, man, that is the coolest gecko I have ever seen. I love how he did that.
Yes.
But he
Yeah.
busted his ass to be able to draw like that. I mean, that's all the guy did. He drew all the time, every single thing, stupid stuff that he didn't like, but he would make it into something cool. And
Yeah.
that's the way to do it. But it takes work, man. It takes a lot of work to do that. And he started out tattooing, dumb shit that customers came in and asked for. And then he
Mhm.
realized, well, I can just make this dumb shit into something that I draw that's cool. And he did that. And now
Yeah.
he's doing like all kinds of crazy, cool custom stuff all the time.
Right.
Um, but I mean, he put in the work and he did it, and that's what you got to do.
Yes, drawing is a skill, and like any other skill, you have to work to improve it. And you can always get better. I don't care what level you're at. And I start apprentices out with drawing the random stuff that comes in. And yeah, I mean, it sucks. How many different versions of infinity signs can you draw? You know, a lot actually. Somebody that worked for us came up with the coolest drawing assignment ever. He had a list of common tattoo themes, and the drawing assignment for the apprentices was like, find one reference picture that you like of this subject matter. Let's say it was a panther. He's like, and then draw 10 different versions of said panther using only that as reference, but not just copying that. And it's difficult.
Yeah. Well, if I remember correctly, the assignment is you do 5 versions based off of a tattoo or flash design.
Right.
Then you do 5 versions that are based off of a non-tattoo, non-flash design. So
Yes,
like
that's it.
wallpaper or National Geographic or just any photograph, you know. So you had to draw it tattoo style from a tattoo, and then tattoo style from some other non-tattoo reference. And I think there was 100 different images. And by the time you're done with that assignment, you should have what, 1,000 images drawn.
Yeah.
That is a great assignment. It was Dave Brule that created that.
Yes. I during my apprenticeship, all I did was draw. That was the only thing, and that probably lasted for about 3 months, and that was it. That was my job. I sat in the back at the drawing table and drew all
Did you
day.
draw things that like customers came in and asked for, or did he give you assignments to draw, or were you tracing flash, like redrawing flash?
I drew stuff that customers asked for using tattoo magazines as reference.
Okay.
At the time, there was only 2. Obviously, this is pre-internet.
Yeah.
I learned to tattoo in a shop that was old, and over the years, the sun had faded the flash that was hanging on the walls, and I redrew every sheet of flash in the shop. But it was cool. He actually asked me if I had difficulty drawing anything, which is funny because he had difficulty drawing everything. Excellent tattooer, great tracer, couldn't draw.
Yeah. Well,
and I just off the top of my head, I was like, I don't know, horses. He was like, sweet, here's a sheet of unicorns. Redraw this. Don't trace it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I don't think that drawing translates. Being a good drawer does not translate to being a good tattooer. I think we've already discussed that at some other point.
Yes. But obviously being a good artist is definitely going to help.
For sure.
Sometimes you can just get by on sheer creativity. I went to college for commercial art, and I mean, dude, most of it was just learning how to steal other people's shit to use for yourself.
Yeah.
And combining different reference materials and stuff like that. It was crazy, the level of plagiarism that we were being trained to do. But man, it definitely helped me with laying out tattoos, you know?
Yeah.
So not that I'm tracing other people's stuff to make tattoos. Don't start hating yet. What do you think the person wanting to be a tattooer, what do you think they need to look for in a mentor?
I mean, besides the just personal connection that you have with them, like getting along with them, and being able to work together with somebody.
Sure.
If I was advising somebody who was new to the business, I would say, hey, you need to know what the expectations are from your mentor and from you, so that everything is clear and understood, and you know that you're going in a direction and making progress.
Right. Yeah, I think there needs to be milestones for you to reach. And I kind of give a brief overview of what we're going to be going over and the things that are important, but there's a lot of stuff you're learning multiple things at the same time. You know what I mean? You're working on drawing tattoos and customer service in the beginning. That's happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
How to answer the people's questions, and just depends on the individual. Some people don't have good phone etiquette and don't realize it. And that's a pet peeve. How off-putting is it to call the business and the person on the other end of the phone sounds rude or disinterested?
Yeah.
I think that I don't know. Ask around about the tattoo shop. What kind of reputations does this place
For
have?
sure.
And I don't know if asking other tattooers is the answer, because people like to hate. But if do you know other people that have been tattooed there? If you're hanging out at the shop and you see some things that you know maybe are unacceptable, any red flags, you should get out of there.
Oh, for
How
sure.
how are they treating the customers? Are they talking shit about the customers after they leave? And I mean, obviously you're going to say something about a guy that's or girl or whatever that's annoying or something like that, but how are they treating clients of the opposite sex, or how are they treating coworkers? I mean, are they nice to each other? Is there a pleasant and safe kind of vibe there? If not, it might not be the place for you. I talked to one guy. I asked him about his apprenticeship, and he got along great with the people, and he was kind of hanging out, and they were asking him, to run errands for them and stuff like that. Hey, go take this to, so and so over at this place or whatever. And yeah, he realized that he was running drugs for him.
Oh man, that's crazy. Yeah, definitely avoid that.
Yeah. So I don't know, don't, just because they say they'll do it, don't just jump in. Like, do some research. The young lady that I'm helping now, she just said she went to the first place that said yes. The dude had an ad on Instagram saying, I'm looking for an apprentice. And what he really was looking for was a maid.
Yeah.
And I know the guy, and he's an excellent tattooer, and he's not a bad person. But I think that was more of the motivation, and he did teach her some things. But yeah, I think that was the motivation, and I've seen that before. People advertising, looking for an apprentice. I would be a little wary of that, but that's not always bad. I mean, if you're a big company and you need staff, the best way to get them might just be to train them yourself.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tattooers, but there's not enough good ones.
That's the truth.
Some would say too many tattooers, maybe too many bad ones. One bad tattooer is too many.
Yeah.
Actually, I guess you should always have one. That's a good basis of comparison.
Well, you also need that guy down the street that's doing those cheap tats on those turds so that you don't have to deal with them.
Sure. And the thing is if you're not going to be the best tattooer, if you're just going to be competent, you can still be successful by making up for that with your personality and your customer service. I would rather get tattooed by somebody that I get along with, that I want to spend a couple of hours with, than some dude that's amazing that's a fucking asshole.
For sure.
I'm sure we've said that before, but
yeah,
the experience is really, really important. So when you're going around looking for some place to teach you, that's really important. How do what's the vibe at the shop? And it's going to be, what might be a good fit for you might not be a good fit for me. It's really, really subjective,
Yeah.
and do your research, and just because the person's been on a TV show doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be the right mentor for you either,
Yeah. You also probably want to spend more than one visit before you make a decision. You need to be around those people in that shop or that person
Mm-hmm.
multiple times. So one day might be a good day, one day might be a bad day.
Yeah.
If every day's a bad day, just book it on out of there. Just forget it.
Yeah.
But if every day seems like a good day, that's probably a pretty good sign. And I think if somebody tells you no, that doesn't mean you should just give up.
It does
I
not.
mean, Yeah. I mean, like you already said, I think I told you this the other day. You asked me a question. I was like, no, I'm against that. And
Yeah,
you're like, why? And I said, because that's my default answer. I just
it
always
is.
say no to
Yeah,
everything. It's easier to say no and then change your mind to yes. If you say
yeah.
yes, that's it. It's over.
I tell people no all the time, and later they still wind up getting in
Yeah.
because they were persistent. They wanted it. There is a tattoo artist, Zach Barber. He tattoos in New Jersey. He worked for us. I turned that dude down right off the bat. He was getting tattooed by some of the other guys at the shop, and they told him, they were like, "You should ask Jack
Yeah.
if you want to learn to tattoo." And I was like, "No, no." And he continued to come in, and he convinced those dudes to teach him. And boy, am I glad that they did. He was excellent to be around. He still is. He's a great guy to be around. He just came and did a guest spot, and it was great having him back. And of course, if somebody's learning at the shop where I'm working at, obviously I'm going to help them out too. And that's kind of become a thing with us, is the people that are learning with us, they might have one main mentor that's kind of calling the shots, but everybody else has a lot to offer, and it helps them out. And even the younger tattooers that are real new, because they just went through it. They just went through
Sure.
the apprenticeship. All of that stuff is fresh in their mind. One of the girls that works for me was told in the beginning of her apprenticeship, if she doesn't leave crying every day, then it's not a good apprenticeship.
Who,
And
somebody in your shop said that?
yes, she didn't
Oh
learn
my
from us. She
God.
learned at a place in Tennessee, and I couldn't fucking believe it. I'm like, that's terrible. And she did. She left crying a lot. She was she, she reminded me of, if you meet a woman that's been in an abusive relationship.
Right.
She was like, "Oh, well, they only hit me a couple of times."
Right. He
I'm like, they
promised
should
he
never
wouldn't do it
hit you.
again. Yeah.
She got locked in a closet. And yeah, that's ridiculous. There was a place locally that was apprenticing large groups of people at once,
Yeah.
and we've talked about this before. The guy was targeting women mostly,
Yeah.
and he would tell them the same things that abusive husbands tell their wives. If you leave here, nobody is going to hire you. He
Yep.
really, really tried to drill into their head that he was the only place available to them that
Yeah.
would allow women to work. Now, there's tons of women that tattoo in Orlando. Multiple shops have female artists, but this guy really, really focused on that fact, that if they left him, it was going to be brutal for them wherever they were, because tattooers are a bunch of misogynist, woman hating assholes.
Yeah.
That's a form of fucking abuse.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, go to a place if you're looking for an apprenticeship where you feel comfortable, and you can get along with people, and do some research. And once you do get in the door, Clay, what do you think they should expect? Is
Well,
it going to be brutal and abusive like so many people think?
no, I mean, I don't think it has to be. I think there's going to be some challenges. I think that something that probably is a reoccurring thing that I've seen is it turns out to be different than what people think. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That can create stress and it can be challenging, but I don't think that it's necessarily going to be this hazing kind of fraternity atmosphere. There's sometimes antics in the tattoo shop, right? I mean, we're on the edge of acceptable society, I think, even still after the internet and TV shows have expanded the business tremendously. This is still edgy, and there it's not going to be, I think, dangerous or anything like that. I think you should expect there to be times of serious time to get to work periods where you need to make sure that you're doing the right thing. If you're cleaning up after your mentor, you need to make sure that you're not cross contaminating and things like that. That stuff is taken very seriously.
Yeah.
But if you have some downtime, there might be some goofing off, and you need to be able to go back and forth from being serious to relaxing and having fun pretty quickly. Because if a customer comes in, you got to be right back you got to get back to business.
Yeah.
Hop up and help them and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't think that it's necessarily going to be some abusive relationship. It shouldn't be. It should
No.
be a generally positive experience.
Right.
But I think it should also be challenging, and I think it should be something that expands your understanding of how the business works, because there's coming from the outside, you don't know what you're getting into. There's no way you could know.
No. And it's kind of like your family. You
Yeah.
spend a lot of time together with these people, and just like your family, we've all got that one family member who just loves to rip on you. And
Yep.
you know what I mean? Like, there's gonna be stuff like that. Like, you hanging out with your friends, there's gonna be a little bit of trash talking and whatever. But there should never be any physical abuse. And like any family, you're not all going to be able to get along all the time. We've all got a lot going on, and life is complicated. But in general, yeah, it should be pleasant to be there. I was so excited to go to the shop every day. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
really, really, really looked forward to that. And that's how it should be,
for
you
sure.
know?
If you go into a shop and you're considering becoming an apprentice there, and somebody in that shop seems like they don't want to be there, there's a problem.
Yeah.
You should walk in there, and everybody should be happy to be there. If there's somebody that's not, and everybody has a bad day now and again, so it should be over a period of multiple visits where you can really assess this. Everybody should seem to want to be there.
Right. Right. And yeah, they should want to be there. And like you said, there also is times where you got to be serious, and you got to take it seriously. We deal with body fluids, with blood and stuff like that, and fucking around can jeopardize somebody's life. And it's that serious. So yeah, you got to knuckle down and take it seriously. But it is going to be fun. It should be.
Yeah.
Be prepared to work, I think, is another advice I would give somebody. I think we've talked about that. Like, you're going to have some duties and responsibilities, a lot of cleaning, you know,
Yeah.
there's always something that needs to be wiped down or cleaned or swept or mopped or something. If scrubbing toilets is beneath you, then maybe seek another career path. That toilet don't clean itself. And if there's not an apprentice to do it, I'm doing it, or one of the other people's doing it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I hope you're doing it at your own house, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
I think again that there are too many people that overlook um, the customer service aspect of what we do. I think that no matter how good of a tattooer you are,
Hmm.
as far as technical application and art and all those things, if you are not providing a good experience and treating your customers the right way, you're never going to be successful. If you can't sell a tattoo to somebody and convince that person that you're the right person to do the tattoo for them,
Hmm.
then you can't do any tattoos. Like, your success is completely dependent on that. And there's a lot of
Yes.
tattoo shops now, more than there's ever been in my lifetime. So
Oh
that
my
means
God.
there's more competition.
Yeah. And it's all about how you treat the customers. That's super, super important. Your personality and you know, and sometimes with tattooing, you have to it's one of the few jobs where you get to tell the customer no,
Yeah.
but there's a way to go about that without
Yeah. You have
being
you have to have some
condescending.
tact.
And man, I see it sometimes, and I have to pull them aside and be like, dude, the customers aren't just born with this knowledge. You have to educate them, and being a dick about it. They're
Yeah.
not stupid because they don't know you can't, you know, do it that small. So don't treat them like they're stupid. That's hard because we deal with it so much day in and day out for so long that
Yeah.
you kind of take for granted that people don't know a lot of this. And that person walking through the door, it could be their first time they've ever been in a tattoo shop, and they're going to judge the entire tattoo industry and everything about it off of their interaction with you.
Yep.
And that's a lot of responsibility, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think another thing is if you see the staff in the store when there's no customers around, like you're checking the shop out, see if you want to be an apprentice there. If you see the people in there abusing each other and not being polite and respectful and professional with each other, they're probably not going to be polite, professional, and respectful to their customers or you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So beware.
Especially you, because you're coming in and you're the peon, you know?
Yeah, you had the lowest status.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people have the right personality. One of the guys told me the other day, in a way, he was disappointed that it wasn't more abusive. He fully expected it to be, worse than it was. And I don't know, maybe he needs therapy. I don't know. I'm like, well, I'm sorry we let you down. We can definitely start picking on you. But he likes that kind of witty,
Yeah,
back and forth,
banter. Yeah.
banter that might offend somebody else. So I'm not saying you have to put up with abuse, but man, if you're the kind of person that's looking for things to be offended by, this might not be for you.
Well, there probably is a tattoo shop that'll fill that niche, you know?
Probably.
It's not one that you or I are working in, but I mean, they're
No.
out there.
We deal with adult things,
Yeah.
even if you're in a shop that doesn't do piercing, you're still tattooing people sometimes in some very personal areas, or the subject matter of the tattoo could be considered offensive to one person or another. I mean, I bet any shop that's got flash on the wall, there's at least one set of boobs,
Oh yeah.
and
Yep.
that's offensive to some people. It's definitely not like it used to be. There's probably not swastikas on the wall in tattoo shops now, but that was a thing. But we deal with things that you might personally find offensive. I don't love everything I tattoo on people, and I certainly don't love every customer, but I try and make them think that I do, because that's my fucking job.
Yeah. Well, and because you love tattooing, man. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
And
can love tattooing and not be into the design that you're doing that
mhm,
particular time, or really have a good connection with the client that you're dealing with in any given moment. But it's all part of it, man. It's all part of the
yeah.
game.
What else do you think that we should tell people looking for an apprenticeship? I mean, we've talked about how, what not to do as a tattooer, and some myths with tattooing and stuff like that. But like, how do you do it right? What else should we tell them?
Well, I think that there's not one answer to that, because every person's situation is different, and it's going to be as different as any two relationships with any two random people could possibly be. So I think the main thing is somebody is comfortable in the place that they're going to learn to tattoo at,
Yeah.
and all the expectations are clear. They know what their responsibilities are, and what their rights are, and things like that, so that it's a measurable progress that they're having,
Yeah.
instead of just kind of floating, with the current, just drifting. Who knows?
Yeah. I think it's also important to point out that not all tattoo shops are the same. There's different ways to operate a shop, and we have how we do things. We are what's called a street shop. We take walk-ins every day. If there's somebody, if we have an artist available, you can walk in and get a tattoo right then. We operate busy shops, and there's a lot of other people you'll be working with. If you're not good working with a large group of people, a smaller shop is going to be a better fit for you. Sometimes dealing with a bunch of different personalities is hard for people. So we do things a little different. There are shops where they don't take walk-ins. I did a guest spot at a shop where you couldn't even go in. The door was locked at all times. It was appointment only.
Huh.
And while I was there, the dude allowed walk-ins, so I could make some money. And it was great because he never did that. The demand was really high, and we were really busy. But each shop is different. For me, I wouldn't want to learn in a shop like that. I think it's important for you as an apprentice to interact with a lot of people, deal with a lot of customers, not even tattooing them, just talking to them,
Yeah.
or hearing your mentor or other people in the shop talk to them and see how they deal. That way you're going to see a lot of different situations and how to handle each one of those situations, or that type of individual. If you're an apprentice at somebody's private studio, you're going to miss out on a lot of the customer service and the customer interaction. And I think that's important. You also, in the beginning, are going to need to do a lot of tattoos. If you're doing one apprentice tattoo a week, like, each week is going to be like starting all over.
Yeah.
I think it's important for you to do a bunch of tattoos, and that's what's so hard for somebody to learn out of their house. They're not getting the volume of customers that we're going to be able to provide, unless
Yeah.
you've got a lot of friends. And that's important too. I mean, you definitely need some suckers to practice on in the beginning.
Yeah. If it takes 5,000 hours of doing something to be expert at it, or whatever the term is, then doing one tattoo a week it's going to take the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn how to tattoo, you need to be in a shop that has some kind of volume of business so that you can get that under your belt. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to do it, you have to spend time tattooing to get good at it. There's no book you can read or video you can watch that's a substitute for actually doing tattoos.
No. No.
So
And
that should be understood.
yeah, I've never. Uh, a lot of people shit on Huck Spalding tattooing A to Z. Speaking of books you can read,
Yeah,
and I mean, a lot of the information is outdated and whatever, but there's a lot of good information in that book.
there is.
I think even the worst book written on tattooing probably has something of value in it.
For sure.
Unfortunately, to somebody that's inexperienced, they're not going to be able to discern what's garbage and what isn't. Yeah, book learning ain't gonna do it all.
No, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with reading about tattooing or watching videos or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But
Oh, for sure.
you need to take everything with a grain of salt. And when you get ready to apply something that you have learned, you need to have somebody there that can tell you that is the correct way, that is the incorrect way. Hold your
Mhm.
hand like this, stretch the skin, tilt this angle, get the light correct. There's so many things that you don't even know that you need to do. So
Yeah.
you really need somebody that can explain that to you. And we probably said this before, but just because somebody's a good tattooer does not mean that they have the ability to teach you how to be a tattooer. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
totally separate skill set to teach somebody.
Sure. Maybe if you're an apprentice and you're looking for a shop and you've got some guy that's agreed to it, it might not be a bad idea to ask them why. Why have they agreed to teach you? I mean, they might tell you, well, never mind then and get the fuck out. But I mean, what is their motivation? Because it ain't easy to teach somebody. There's a lot of work involved. I enjoy that. And I know other tattooers that do too. And then there's other guys out there that are like, man, they don't have the patience for it.
Yeah.
So why does this guy want to be your mentor or gal or whoever, this person, this individual?
Yeah.
And I think when you do start doing tattoos, I can't remember if we touched on this, you should take a picture of every single tattoo you do. No matter how you feel about it, take a picture of it. And then you can go back and look at that and analyze what mistakes you made and learn from that. It's a great learning tool, and it's real humbling, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
When we were talking, to go back and look at that.
Well, especially now that everybody has high resolution digital camera in their pocket, there's no
Yes.
reason you can't take a picture of every tattoo that you do. I also think you should keep a journal and write down
Hmm.
what your thoughts and experience is with every tattoo that you do. Everything from the placement on the body, what the skin felt like, the needle
Hmm.
configuration that you use, the pigment that you use. You should get a critique on the tattoo, have a mentor look at the tattoo and tell you what you did wrong and what you did right, so that you can look at it and be like, hey, you didn't stretch the skin right here. Your line is weak. You're inconsistent with your shading here. It doesn't go up to the line, whatever. There's
Hmm.
certain things that only an experienced tattooer can look at and dissect for you. So
Yeah.
you need to make sure that whoever's teaching you can do that for you.
Yeah. Part of my apprenticeship was basically a photography class.
Yeah.
I had to buy a nice camera, and there was nothing digital. It was all film,
Yeah.
and learn how to take a good picture. And now that's not necessarily as important because there are some pointers that your mentor can give you.
I think it's
Um,
just easier now. It's still
yeah,
important. It's just
yeah. Oh, for
easier.
sure. And I can tell you one thing: what is in the background of your picture is just as important as the picture of the tattoo. Um, when I look through people's portfolios and I can see they've got this nice fresh tattoo that looks pretty good, but in the background is half a dozen empty beer bottles.
Yeah. Or just like a overflowing trash can, maybe, or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah. There was one person that sent me a link to their portfolio, and I was looking through their tattoos, and in the background was a chick doing snorting a line of something.
Nice.
I'm like, holy shit, look at that. This chick's doing coke in the background.
That's
I love
yeah,
tattooing.
yeah. That's so great.
But yeah, pay attention to what's in your background.
Well, that could be some advice for somebody looking for an apprenticeship. If they're looking at pictures of a tattooer that they might want to learn from, is there shit like that in the background of his or her pictures?
Yeah.
Because that could be a warning for you.
Yeah. Another thing, and this just occurred to me, is I think when you're going to start getting out there and looking around to see if somebody can teach you, I think you need to be familiar with what are the local laws regarding tattooing.
Yeah.
Some states require a documented apprenticeship or some kind of school for you to get a tattoo license. And once you do know what the laws are, I mean, look at the guys and the gals and people in the shop that you're going to. Are they following the law? I
Yeah.
mean,
It's a
whether
good
you
point.
agree with whatever part of the law there is, doesn't matter because you still got to follow it. Is it stupid you have to do A? Maybe. Because remember, laws regarding tattooing are typically people that know nothing about it.
Right.
But are they following the laws? Because if they're not, that might be a big red flag.
Yeah. I mean, do they even know the laws?
Sure.
Imagine if a prospective apprentice came into the shop and started asking you questions about the tattoo laws and you didn't know more than they did. Like, that would be embarrassing.
Yeah, yeah. An apprentice, when you're discussing getting an apprenticeship, I think each party it should be interviewing the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do I want to learn from this guy, and do I want to teach this person?
Yeah.
It's a two-way street. You know, some states have no laws regarding tattooing at all, or it could be by county.
Yeah.
Um,
I know that one law in Florida is that in order to be a licensed tattooer, you have to be 18 years old.
yes, yeah, yeah.
I don't know why they decided that 18 was the right number for somebody to perform tattooing, but that's what the law says. So it
Yeah,
is what
I,
it
I
is.
I guess they kind of feel like it's an adult kind of industry. Like I said earlier, we're you're gonna tattoo somebody in a pretty private area at some point in your career.
Yeah.
Um, Other states don't have that regulation. We had a guy working for us for a little while that started his apprenticeship at 15 in New York.
Wow.
He was tattooing people at 16, and he was good. He was 18 when he came and worked with us for a little bit.
Huh. That's interesting. So were his parents tattooers or something? I mean, how do you get into the tattoo business when you're 15 years old?
An uncle.
Ah, okay.
I think having some real world experience, working some other type of job before you learn to tattoo is certainly could be helpful. I mean, you went and you had a straight job. You were a welder,
Yeah.
you know, or whatever.
Well, you were in the Army. I mean, that
Sure.
counts.
Yeah, sure. But you definitely, I really appreciate the freedom and how laid back working in a tattoo shop is now, because I know what the real world's like.
Oh,
I've seen
yeah.
it. It's terrifying. and I see an issue with young tattooers. They've never had to work hard, and some of them become like, I don't know, like almost like lazy and resentful. They expect more. You know what I mean? Because there's no I don't know. They haven't had to. They've always had it easy, I guess.
I think every young person thinks every old person feels that way. But the older I get, the more I'm like, man, it really is. It really do be like that.
Yeah, here's an example of how spoiled I've seen them get. There was a gentleman that worked for us, and we provide most of the supplies, ink caps being one of them. And normally they were clear ink caps, but it used to get ink caps and they were all different colors. And sometimes it was way cheaper to buy them like that. So we
Yeah.
had colored ink caps, and the dude sat down and picked all the clear ones out because he didn't like the colored ones. He was mad about it. No, I've had people get mad about.
I'm fine with integrated ink caps.
Yeah, I am too. I've had people bitch about not us only having nitrile gloves. I'm allergic to latex. If you tattoo long enough, you will develop a sensitivity to it if you're
Yeah.
always wearing latex.
Yeah.
And so we just have nitrile. And yeah, they're probably not as comfortable as latex gloves, but
They don't stretch.
no. But the petroleum products we use in tattooing dissolves the latex gloves.
It's true.
So you should be using nitrile, but whatever, they're always going to complain about something. So whatever. It's totally off topic. So any other advice we should give?
I don't know. I feel like we've been talking about this for a long time.
Yeah, I know.
I think when we define what an apprenticeship is, I still think it's a shame that there's not a standard universally accepted apprenticeship process for tattooing. I feel like if we don't make that
somebody's
and
going
adopt it, it's gonna be forced on us. The government's gonna do it or something like that. I mean, it's already in a few states where they have these expectations. If we could have got ahead of it and just said, hey, this is how we do this, and here's the process, and the government could just say, yep, well, we accept that. I mean, at least it came from us. You know?
And it's going to be some arbitrary shit. Like you said, in the building trades, they require X number of hours of doing something before you move on to the next level.
Yeah.
While that sounds like a great idea, each individual progresses at their own pace.
Right.
You might not need that much time. You might need more time. You know? And somebody that doesn't know a shit about tattooing is going to get together with somebody that thinks they know about tattooing.
Yeah.
And create something terrible for us. I don't have the solution to that issue, but I'm real good at pointing out problems.
Yeah, well, that's the first step, right?
Sure, knowing there's a problem.
That's it for this episode of I Love Tattooing. Sure hope you enjoyed it. Please check out our website, ilovetattooing.com, and leave us a comment or send us a suggestion. If there's a topic you'd like to hear us discuss, or you want to give us some feedback, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening. See you next time.